Greetings, this is Gustavo Choi for aetuts.com, and this is part 2 of our Final Cut Pro series. A vital aspect of editing, regardless of the software we are using, is organization. So the purpose of this tutorial is to use the skills we learned in the previous tutorial to import raw footage, cut it up, and organize it to make our editing process faster and easier. That said, we can proceed to import our raw footage and hit choose. This is basically unedited 8mm footage I shot. For a bigger project, this is just a scene of a bigger thing, and as you can see, it's totally unedited. And so our goal is to cut this up into several clips so we can put it in order and make it look good. Now we hit Command B to create a bin, which are basically folders to store footage in, and we call this bin master clip. And our master clip is basically our raw footage, and we drag it into there. We hit Command B once again to create another clip called subclips, and we hit Command B for the last time and call this sequences, and drag our sequence right there. Since this is a rather basic project, we don't have any audio, but if we were to have audio and sound effects and stuff, we would create a fourth bin called audio. Since now we have our bins, we are ready to start cutting up the master clip, which we already have in our viewer window. So we drag the playhead to the beginning and start cutting up. Hit spacebar to play, and the first few seconds are basically something useless, so we just leave there, and our actual footage starts till here. So if we want this clip, we hit I to put an end point, hit spacebar, and the clip ends right there. So we take our playhead, put it right where we want the clip to end, and hit O to put an out point, and then we hit Command U, and that is basically a subclip, and we could call it walks into park. And as you see, the icon is a little cut up film strip, which means it's a subclip. So we drag it into our subclips bin, and once there are a lot of ways to even organize it even further. I like to use log notes, which are basically notes I use to organize the footage. I could call this a wide shot. We continue cutting up our raw footage right there. Hit play. Actually put an endpoint right there where this clip starts and hit play. This is a rather long clip. And we hit stop. That's where it ends. We can use the arrow tools for a more precise frame by frame scrolling of a footage, and we hit out, the O for the out point, and hit Command U, and we could call it walks into part 2, and drag it back into our subclips. I have now completed the cutting of the raw footage. As you will see, if you scroll a bit to the right, I have filled in the log notes. This is really cool because in a big project you're going to have a lot of subclips and you might be looking for a certain type of shot. So that's why I really like to write what type of shot it is, because you can organize them in whatever way you want alphabetically. If you keep scrolling there, you're going to find a lot of information on your clips and a lot of good stuff you might want to know. If we were to right click any of our subclips, or any of our clips for that matter, we're going to get a lot of options I encourage you to explore. What I want to talk about right now is labeling. You can actually change the color of your clip regarding to make organizing even easier. I personally do not use that, but some hyper-organized editors I know use that a lot. Same way as you can change the color of your clips, you can do the same for your bins, and I think they look really nice when it's all colorful. If we close this and then right click the empty window, you'll see there are a lot of ways of looking at the browser window. The one I'm used to and the one I use is the list, but there are icons and stuff you can use. I recommend the list except for one thing which is really cool. And that thing is, if we were to double click our subclips window, it would open in a separate window. And if we right click and view as medium or large icons, we can actually select all of them. And if we drag it into our timeline, we're going to have basically uh, a sequence with our clips in the order they are put. This is just for really rough editing. I would in no way recommend of you to edit like this because it's not good, but it's good for previewing and for rough editing. And delete this from our timeline. I will cover real editing in part 3 of this tutorial. If we were to drag one of our clips into the timeline, we would get a message that tells us that our clip does not match our sequence settings, and if we want to change our sequence settings to match the clip settings, if we hit yes, that basically meant our canvas was changed to the same size as our clip, which is 720 by 480. This is a really cool feature in some of the newer Final Cut Pros. In the older ones, you have to do the following. Just hit Command 0, or we go to Sequence Settings to open the Sequence Settings menu, and we manually change it from HDTV, which is my default, to NTSC DV, which matches this to this. Still here we have a lot of options which are actually more advanced, and the default is always a good way to go if you don't want to get into that much of a hassle. And when we do this, we actually don't have to render as much, and that is really good. I will now cover an essential and very important thing in Final Cut Pro, and that is our source footage. For this project, I only have one footage, which I have here in my desktop, and this is a very small project, but in larger projects, we are going to be using audio, video, text, and a whole lot of files, and I would really advise you to keep it into one file, because the way Final Cut Pro works is that it's not a self-contained program. It actually uses references to your file. So if we were to move this from there, all of our project would not work and show media offline. I know you probably knew that. I was just making sure. So we put this back here, and when we open the program, files will still appear offline. To reconnect media, we choose everything that appears disconnected, and then go to File, Reconnect Media, and then we hit Locate, Raw Footage, and Open. Uh, this search option is basically the same, only that the computer looks for it instead of yourself. We hit Connect, and everything is well again. With our source footage is modify it with another program. For example, I love color correcting stuff with After Effects, and it totally beats uh, Final Cut Pro. We import our footage, and we can color correct it. Since it's black and white footage, there's not a whole lot we can do to it. Since the whole sequence looks alike, we can color correct it on the very same way. So we are going to zoom in, and I usually start by doing the color correction auto color. Then I kind of modify this to, let's say, 2.60, and the white clip to 10. That way we actually make our blacks darker, our whites just pop out and look better. Then we actually enhance it a bit more by adding brightness and contrast. And here we make brightness -50 and our contrast 14. And I think it looks pretty good. The 8mm footage looks good in itself, so there's not a lot of color correction needed. After Effects is a great program, and I'm sure you guys know a million things you can do to this clip. But for this project, I think we're going to be okay with color correcting. So we proceed to exporting it. Uh, Make sure to export it in the same size and format, our size being DV and our format being H.264. We make sure we drag the playhead to the very end of the clip, close it right there, hit Command M, and we choose the output mode as H.264. We hit OK to that. Our output would be perfect in our desktop. We double check this and we hit render. So we are all done exporting. So we hide this program by hitting Command Control H, and in our desktop we have this, which is the color corrected version of our footage, which looks pretty good. And this folder contains the main file we're using in our Final Cut Pro project. So this is what we do. We change the name of this to the exact name of that, which was raw footage. And we change this from MP4 to MOV.MOV, and we hit yes, use MOV. Now, to match this, then we drag this in here and we replace it. We get this dialog because Final Cut Pro is open and is using that thing, so we hit OK. We exit Final Cut Pro. We exit Final Cut Pro. And now we will be able to replace the file. Open Final Cut Pro, we will get this dialog, which basically tells us our files are offline. We hit reconnect and we hit locate, and we locate our footage, which was right there. Hit open, and it tells us that some things have been changed, and that is totally okay because that's what we wanted. We hit continue and hit connect, and now we actually can work with the raw footage. You will see that the footage has been applied to our subclips, and if we had edited anything on the timeline, that would have been affected as well. This concludes part 2 of the Final Cut Pro tutorials. Thanks for bearing with me, and stay tuned for the last part, which we will be doing some real editing using all the skills we've learned in these previous tutorials.